Hey, welcome back to the Mortal Guitarist with me, Andy Picker. Right, in the last video that I put up, we took a quick look at the question of if I am learning to play guitar, should I bother to learn music theory? And I suggested that yes, if you can bring yourself to do it, there may be some benefits and advantages to doing that. This time out, we're going to have a look at what music theory actually is, or more to the point, where music theory comes from. Because the simple truth is that music theory is mostly made up stuff which is built on top of just a little tiny bit of physics. So let's have a look at what that little tiny bit of physics is, and then at the basis that all of our music theory is built on. And we'll have a little look at the music theory itself in the next video in the series. Right, so music for our purposes is made up of sound. Yes, of course, it's got silence in it as well, but we're concerning ourselves with the sounds. And one of the properties of the sounds that we hear as music is that it has pitch to it. So you get some notes which are high, some notes which are low. So low, high. Yeah. Sound travels to us through air. It travels, of course, through other things. If you put your head in a swimming pool, you can still hear sound. Press your ear up against your cell wall, you can still hear sound. But most of the time when we're listening to music, we're hearing stuff that travels through the air. And what we're hearing is pressure differences in the air that surrounds us. And sometimes that air gets pushed, so it gets compressed, and other times it gets pulled, so it gets thinner. So thicker, thinner, thicker, thinner, compression, rarefaction, compression, rarefaction. And we usually draw this when we draw it like this because it's easier. So what we have is something where as the wave that we draw starts to go upwards, you're getting the more compressed air, and as it starts to go downwards, you're getting the less compressed, the thinner air. And the number of times that you get the thick, thin, thick, thin, thick, thin, compression, rarefaction, the number of times that happens in a second is the frequency of the sound that we're hearing. And that's measured either in cycles per second or in hertz. They're the same thing, they mean the same thing. Cycles is usually used, you might hear it when you're talking about something humming from the electricity supply. You might say, oh yeah, there's a 60 cycle mains hum or a 50 cycle mains hum, depending on what country you're in. When we're talking about music and engineering stuff, we usually talk about it in terms of hertz, but they mean the same thing. 1 hertz is 1 cycle per second. So when a musical instrument moves air, it creates these pressure variations in the air, and that is where all of sound comes from. So that might happen as a result of strings or things like drums or guitar bodies or cymbals that you tap, or the folds in your throat, your vocal cords as they're usually called, or a column of air in a woodwind instrument, a reed, something like this. Whatever it is, it moves air. Even if it's an electronic instrument, it at some point has to be plugged into a speaker, and the speaker moves the air. Now, mechanical systems, when they vibrate, don't do it as cleanly as we might think. So if you pluck a string on a guitar, it's stopped at a fret, it's stopped at the bridge, and we kind of get this impression that maybe the string vibrates and it just kind of travels in the middle. But it doesn't. What actually happens is that the middle of the string vibrates, but then other points along the string vibrate as well. So as well as getting the note called the fundamental, which is the one that you're making, you actually get another set of notes produced by the other little bits of string that are vibrating in their own way. And these are the harmonic series of the main note. So the little bit of physics that we need to worry about is the fact that when something vibrates, it produces a note, and it also produces some other quieter notes on top of that. And it's those other notes that help us to understand what the instrument that we're listening to is, why it's a guitar and not a banjo, why it's a piano and not a trumpet, for instance. The characteristics of those notes is that sometimes they play well with other notes. And when that happens, we tend to say, yes, it sounds good, I like that. And when they don't play well together, we tend to go, oh, really don't like that very much. And a prime example of this would be the good old tritone, which is sort of pretty dissonant to most people's ears. So take a guitar, pluck a string, and you get a note, and that note is an A. If you double the frequency of that note, so as I said, there's a tiny little bit of physics in here, double the frequency, the number of cycles per second, the number of times it vibrates in a second, and you get a note which sounds similar but is higher in pitch. And that note is given the same name. So it's an A, which is a made-up name, and it's an A, which is a made-up name. And if you double the frequency again, you get another A, and if you double the frequency again, you get another A. If you halve the frequency, you get another A. So if that was all we had, we'd be a bit restricted, because you'd be playing guitar solos like... and you're not going to go far with that. So what we need to do is take our first A and our next A and put some other stuff in between. And this is where the made up part starts to come in. So what we have is a bunch of other notes and back to our own A. And these notes tend to be chosen so that the harmonic series, remember those extra notes you get when you make a string vibrate, tend to play nicely together when we combine them in certain ways. Now, this is called an octave, A, an octave up. And if you think about the root of the word octave, oct means 8. But when I just counted those, we went, hang on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And this is where the whole made-up nature of our music comes in. So just as a taster for what we're going to look at next time out, we call the rest of the notes between A and A, we call them B, C, D, E, F, G, and then it goes back to A. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And in between some of those notes, we have sharps and or flats, but in between some of the others, we don't. Why not? Okay, this is very much made up, remember that. So the basis of our music theory is things vibrate, and when they vibrate, they produce notes. They produce notes above the main note that we're hearing, and sometimes those extra notes play well together. Hey everyone, it's that. Oh wow. Oh hey, look at that. Huh. Anyway, this is Andy from the future, like not your future, but my future. And I was putting this video together, and when I kind of watched it back, I was thinking maybe I should have gone into a tiny little bit more detail about the relationship between the intervals of a musical scale and the harmonic series that we get when we get that string or column of air on a musical instrument vibrating. And I kind of thought yes, no, and then figured, do you know what, it's going to get too complicated to go into too much detail because we've not even talked about notes and intervals yet. So rather than go into it, I'll just say that the sets of notes that you get from a vibrating string do tend to relate to intervals which occur in scales which we will look at in probably the next but one video. So just as an example, as a taster, the fundamentals of the note you play, the second harmonic is the octave of that note, the third harmonic is the fifth of that note, and so on. Do not worry if those terms don't mean anything to you. That's why I'm not going into any depth on it right now. If you are interested in this, stick us a note in the comments down below. And if you're really interested and you're impatient to get your teeth into harmonic series, pop over to Wikipedia. There is a fantastic page, I'll put the link down below, that goes into the maths in incredible detail of how it all hangs together, and actually gives you the notes and the deviances from true pitch of I think something like the first 31 harmonics within an octave. So enough there to keep anyone happy. So okay, I will catch you next time out, on with the video. Fundamentally, the sticking points, the points that you can put a pin in and say that is real, is the fact that if you take a note and you double the frequency, you get the same note an octave higher. You split that into some number of divisions, and that gives you the basis for all your music theory. And I'll just say this, if you were brought up mainly in a Western culture, listening to Western music, where we split our octaves into 12 different parts, if you ever listen to, for instance, a sitar, you will find that there's loads and loads of music produced which sound really horribly out of tune to you. And the reason for that is that not all instruments, not all cultures use the same divisions that we use in Western music. So instead of having 12 notes, you might have 22 notes or 18 notes. You know, there is no reason why you can't have any number of what we call microtones or micro notes in between other notes. And we do this a bit on guitar, where we play something and we vibrato it, or we might do those funny little quarter tone bends that just kind of put a little bit of a cry into what we're doing. So there's an awful lot of that. That's the reason that some things sound right to us and that some things don't, simply because the bits that sound right we're used to hearing, and the bits that don't we're not used to hearing. And that's the thing that kind of take that thought over into the next video, that music theory is mostly made up, and what you're used to hearing is what sounds right to you. Okay, let's not overblow this for the moment. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't, if you're interested in keeping up with what we're doing. And next time out, I will give you the little tiny thin layer of music theory that will start to enable you to hang your bits of knowledge onto it and to make sense of it. So until next time out, it's Andy Picker with the mortalguitarist.com. Take care, look after yourselves, and see you in the next video.